I love talking about board games. We're talking about all the crowdfunding that launched this past week, the last 5 to 7 days on Backerkit, Kickstarter, Gamefound, everything you need to know about all of the things that are getting money that you should be thinking about, the things you should not maybe be thinking about, and everything else in between. Do the YouTube thing, click, click, click. If you're not, I do this every week. So most complete information you can get on any of these games, so you don't have to do as much research. Let's do this. Look, first up is Backerkit. I'm not going to forget about Backerkit this week because Daybreak from Matt Leacock. That should be enough for you right there. But if it's not, from CMYK Games, let's talk about this cooperative but individualistic game is going to bring it, because $212,000, in case you missed that, that's massive for a cooperative, pandemic-esque game on crowdfunding, especially on Backerkit, and it's going for over a month, and there's already 4 weeks left. They haven't posted any stretch goals. I'm going to tell you guys right from the beginning, you can't see it here because I'm not logged in. I'm backing this right now. If you know me, you know on this channel I talk and I play a lot of cooperative games. Some of my favorite games are cooperative. Pandemic Iberia, Spirit freaking Island, everything that goes along with that. And I'm covering that on Backerkit when that launches. The Loop. Those are just, they're great cooperative games. This looks really good. I won't tell you anything otherwise. I'm backing it right now. I'm going to put that out there right at the beginning. This is based on climate change, and they're utilizing different mechanics, different gameplay elements to simulate that. And I think they're doing it in a really creative way, and they're saying that it's going to be very adaptable, depending even on, people were posting in the comment section, if things change with the development of how we change, dealing with climate change. Too many changes there. This is really impressive. And the nice thing about this page is it's nice and clean. Sorry, excuse the pun there, but it's clean in the sense that it's just telling you everything you need to know. It's not overwhelmed with videos or graphics or anything like that. Matt Leacock has a video down here at the bottom which runs you through how to play. That's it. There's no hype videos. There's no paid previews. It's just straight up, here you go. What you see is what you get. You're going to be managing cubes and cardboard chits on the board, matching them up as carbon emissions and things that take out carbon emissions, like the sea and trees and things like that. And you're just be matching them up, right? And so you have to eliminate enough of those so that if things aren't eliminated, then you start to fill up this sideboard over here. When 4 of these sideboard pieces fill up, then you put in a 0.1 degrees Celsius slab. And if you fill them all up, you lose. And there's a couple of other lose conditions. There's a couple other global projects that you're doing along the way, and you're going to be putting pieces down on the main board. And there's just a lot of different nice elements, but not overly complicated, but a nice puzzle situation without feeling like you can solve a puzzle, if you know what I'm saying from a cooperative sense, with this. And you're going to look at this and you're going to, okay, well, yeah, Chris, how is this actually filling up? And his video does a great job. I recommend that you watch it just down here, 1.25 speed, and let's see where it is here. There it is right there, 1.25 speed. It'll take about 5 minutes to watch. So if you're interested at all, check this out. You're building things, your cards are going to have different effects at how you're creating clean energy, because you have the carbon footprint here that you're trying to convert, as the graphic just showed you, into green energy. But you still have enough energy to power all of your things. And so that's the dynamic that you're going to be having to eliminate, but then reproduce. And you're going to be having bad events happen each round. And here's the temperature gauging that I just mentioned there. And you can see the filling in of the carbon footprint that's going to be matching up with the trees. And then like the ocean stuff takes the cubes or the big block chunks that are worth like 4. So you can see on this graphic here that 4 of them or 5 of them take up 1 space. So it's not like, well, you just get 1, and it's really, really well thought out. They've been making this game for 2 or 3 years, they said, and it just shows. I think this is probably one of the best looking games I have seen on crowdfunding in the last 6 months. I say that as someone who has looked at probably the most crowdfunding games on the internet, period. There's all other people doing all sorts of roundups all the time. No one has probably read more rule books and looked at more pages than me, period. And this looks like an incredibly solid game. $1 per backer, no plastics, open source. Now, again, I mentioned at the beginning, no stretch goals already, but they're doing 4 weeks, so they're not in a hurry to get up stretch goals. And if you get extras, great. If you don't, I mean, this is just one of those that I think you back because you want to support it, and you get it. You may be able to get it lesser at retail. You know what? I've made my peace with that. I'm not worried about it from that standpoint. I think shipping is going to be like $15. So I'm looking at $65 overall. And that's what it is. So this is just one of those projects you either support or you don't support. And exclusivity may not change your mindset one way or the other. And that's okay. Just like when I talk about with Garfield, you know what? Back it if you want. Get it later at retail if you want. Either way, I think it looks like an absolutely stellar game that I'm going to be super interested in, and I wanted to highlight it at the beginning here. So we're going to go over to crowdfunding. We're going to throw this in here because it literally only has 4 hours left. Dune War for Arrakis. I talked about this, last week's video right after it launched because, as I said, by the time this video airs, when you guys are seeing it, it's going to be well over 1.2 million. And I just wonder, 1.2 million, is that good or not from Cool Mini or not? And I just don't know. Because there's a bunch of exclusives, which I was really surprised by. They just continued to mow them out. I believe there's now 3 expansions. You have here, the discounted here, the Space Guild, the Smugglers, and I think there's a Playmat as well. So the upgrades, possible futures here. And look at that, 2, 5, 6. So not as many, but definitely a few. Not as much as I thought they were going to go all-in wise. It's a great value if you want to flip it. I have, no interest in it from a gameplay standpoint. I have a copy of the War of the Ring, the card game, which is, spoilers, not like the War of the Ring, the board game, but I'll have my review out in the next week or so. And I'll tell you right now, that game it's fantastic. I really like it so far, spoilers. And it's something in this line that I never thought I would be able to get played. And this is the other aspect of this game that I just go, I never be able to get this played. This is 2 players. It's a little bit less nuanced. It's a little bit less rulesy than probably War of the Ring in terms of the minutia, but it just doesn't do anything for me either. The 1 to 4 players, fine. It has more 1 to 4 player than War of the Ring. I would wager, and just the comparisons, more like the card game. And I'll talk about that in my review as well. But it's $110 for the extras. Yeah, it's a good value. You get War of the Ring right now for probably $70 or $75. But the theme doesn't appeal to me as much. The mechanics, the differences in the mechanics don't appeal to me as much. The variants don't appeal to me as much. So take that for what you will. I wanted to highlight it and at least talk about it and mention it. I have no idea if this is considered a success monetarily speaking. Anytime you're breaking 5 figures in terms of backers, though, it's considerable. So take that for what you will with the Cool Mini. Now we're going to go over to Dungeon Universalis. This is the 3rd campaign for Dungeon Universalis, and this is an expansion, another reprint. This is the 1.3 version, if you will. It reminds me a little bit of Machina Arcana on that way, and I think that they're just making improvements for a non-English speaking creator who's, doing it in literally 4 languages, I think. So I give it a lot of kudos, and I've played it. I have not played it enough, though, to do a review on it. But it's really well thought of as probably one of the closest games. And I talk about this with the other one that I'll be talking about next, Fateforge, as well as the other games that have recently launched in the line of the RPG-esque open world Forsakens, if you will, of that ilk. This is probably the originator that people said, you know what, I want Gloomhaven, but I want more RPG. And this is probably the closest thing you're going to see for that. The box and the content for what you're getting at this $85 pledge level is actually insane. This is a massive box. It has a massive amount of content. You don't need everything. The new challenges expansion is what they're offering here. New quest book, new tiles, new bestiary cards. That's the monsters, essentially. It's all standees, which is also why you're getting so much stuff in a nutshell. I will say with this one, I can't do this summary justice in the 2, 5, 8 minutes that it would take me to try and do because of the amount of content that it goes through and the mechanics. The rule book down there's a beginning rule book, a starting rule book, and then the full rule book. The starting rule book is 40 freaking pages. The full rule book is 125. So that's why I can't give you a good synopsis. But this, like I mentioned, is probably the closest thing to D&D with having all of the aspects that you may want out of D&D without playing D&D and still having a dark player, or not really a DM, but somebody to go up against as well. And that's probably the biggest difference that sets it apart from a lot of those other games where it's not just open world cooperative, it's more one versus all. That's the biggest difference that you're probably going to see with this one as opposed to the others. And they just give a bunch of extra stuff here, more standees, more tiles, play mats. Again, you can spend $200 or $300 on this if you want, but the $100 that you can spend as well is going to give you way more content that you're going to be able to play anytime soon. And the 1.3 illustrated rulebook is going to be better than the other ones that they put out in the past. So I just recommend that you check it out. It's got standees, like I mentioned. It's got all these encounters. You're doing D&D, you're upgrading, you're RPGing, you're itemizing. There's a couple videos here if you actually want to see how it plays through. But that's kind of what you need to know. It's an indie developer who's now on the third iteration. This is truly indie. You're not going to find this one on the retailer side of things. He has not sold to retail. I think after the first campaign, they originally sold on the individual shop website for the company, but that's it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to find it elsewhere. You can see how detailed it is just with these pictures, and you can even create random scenarios. I'll leave it there because, again, I don't want to screw it up and do it injustice. So you can see a little bit of what they've got going on here as well. But if you really want to look into it, there's 2 other campaigns that they've done previously. If you have any interest in this, check it out. But it's going to be rules heavy, more so than some of the other ones. So that's probably the divider. Do you want more? You're going to have to learn more. So Dungeon Universalis, there you go. Speaking of other things, Fateforge, Chronicles of Kaan. Campaign, action adventure, fighting, scenario based. 87,000. What does it actually do? Well, the interesting thing of this is that you're getting this little free miniature expansion here, but the game itself is a cooperative action adventure app-based system where you are utilizing these individual sessions, making choices, and then combating enemies that will pop up. The core combat itself is relatively unique because you have these 4 attributes that are going to correspond to dice that you're going to have. And you're going to have a dice pool in which you are allocating from that dice pool in each combat round 4 dice of your choosing. And you may choose however you want because those dice are going to activate subsequent skills that you're going to have at the get-go, but then you're also going to be upgrading as you go. Combat is very short. I think combat, if I'm remembering this is the game, I could be screwing this one up, so don't quote me, 3 rounds. But in the rule book, you have the ability to go an additional round at the cost of a penalty. You roll a corruption die, and you potentially are taking damage or corruption or various problems that are going to follow you in order to complete objectives, in order to be able to leave even, say, the dungeon, or to pick up the items that you may not have been able to get in the first place. And so it's allowing you to adapt as you go. Deluxeifications, miniature boss set here, and these miniatures are actually kind of cool. You get a little bit of an RPG, which I'm not really a big fan of including that as like a freebie. Like I'm playing a board game that's already reminiscent of an RPG. I don't need the actual role-playing game to go along with it. Anyway, you're getting the expansion here, Clash of the Immortals, which is adding a couple new classes, and then a couple new floor plans, weapons, enemies, everything along those lines. It's around the same price, actually slightly more than Dungeon Universalis there, just for the base pledge and the miniature set. The expansion is going to cost you $30 more. And then it runs a little bit of how you're actually going to be playing. You've got your tile set up, you've got your characters, you choose your initiative order. And this is the other thing that really sets it apart is at the end of everyone going, then the enemies are going to go, but also sporadically throughout based on your reactions, your attacks, your abilities that are, put into the app, it's going to be attacking you at other times in between turns. So you need to be aware of that. The die can just be used, like I said, to do that or to unleash skills and combos. You'll have to adapt between the turns, and there's a couple different difficulty modes, which is kind of nice. But the difficulty modes are relatively, just like what you see here, right? They're straightforward. They are communication, no communication, absolutely no communication, and timer. So yeah, the rulebook is right here. I read through it just to give you that summary. They talk about the battle mode. They talk about the background. You get a few stretch goals here. That's pretty much everything you need to know. You can watch some of this video, you can see the preview, but I don't really think you're going to need to see more than the rulebook on this one. The rulebook is relatively succinct. I don't think the videos are going to add a ton unless you really want to see the combat flow, but it's an initiative-based order where you roll dice and use dice. You have to use a dice before you can go, and then just rinse and repeat each combat round until, boom, combat's over. That's it. It's gonna be probably, of the other ones like Kinfire Chronicles and Forsaken and those other ones that are out there right now that's going up against, I would say it's probably going to be the easiest to get to the table of those, having read all of the rule books. It's going to be a little bit more dice based, where, you know, Kinfire is a little bit more skill check, card based, and this is more ability and dice driven. Forsaken is a whole nother realm because that's not cooperative, but that's what you need to know about Fateforged. Next up, we're going to talk about Age of Comics, The Golden Years. This one's a little bit denser of a read for a midweight Euro game, where you are, instead of being the superhero, you are taking on the person who is creating the superhero in the form of a comic book. You are a publisher, and utilizing your publishing editor's assistants, you have 4 of them that you're going to be doing a worker placement style mechanism in order to become the one with the most victory points by raising cash, by printing, by gathering fans, by going out, traveling, actually having to pay for travel via transportation of various means to take your workers to buy orders or to collect orders around the city in the first place. And you're doing this over a series of 5 rounds that have 4 phases each round. So, like I mentioned, the rulebook is a little bit denser in terms of each of these actions that you're going to utilize. It goes through what you can do in printing, publishing, make money, gather fans, walking across town, getting the sales agents for the orders. Of course, there's a solo mode for this worker placement, and there's a few videos that, you know, contrary to Fateforge, I'd say you'd probably want to watch a video to get the flow of this game, just because, as I mentioned, the rule book, which is thrown in somewhere right here, that it's a little bit denser. Let me show you just what I mean. So here's the rule book, and as you go down here, yeah, I have it like zoomed out, but even when you zoom this in a little bit, there's a lot of text each action, so you can see, okay, ideas, developing, hiring, the negatives, the sales that go along with that, the printing, sales agents, fulfilling an order, but you can see there's a ton of text on here. There is a lot of nuance, there's a lot of explanation, and so the special actions and where you can go and the valuations of these and how the round ends and how you're going to be going up different tracks, then you really need to give this a little bit more of a look-see, because I'm not great at summarizing some of these heavier ones, and although this rulebook isn't that long, you can see the amount of work that's in it, so it's probably not as heavy as you may be thinking. You know, it's probably like a 3, I'd wager, on a Board Game Geek, without having looked at the Board Game Geek scale lately, that what people are registering at, but that's sort of what you should know. I believe it's, like it says here, 45 euros is the standard edition. You get all of the little tokens and tokens and tokens. Then you have your exclusive collector's deluxe edition. New comic cards, which is gameplay content, it looks like there. And then you're getting the expansion thrown in, the sleeve, and the designed insert, which are all the rage. So a few stretch goals as well, which are hopefully, looks like non-gameplay right now. So we'll see. Yeah, I mean, this is one where I actually really like the theme. The mechanisms have no interest to me whatsoever, but clearly people are digging it because $80,000 in the first 3 days, it's relatively impressive. So that is Age of Comics. Next up, Dungeon Brah. Yep, I'm covering it. It says it's a deck crawler card game, and you're trying not to die from the bad guy of Kevin. Yep, Kevin. I'm not mistaking this. Kevin is the bad guy, and you ultimately have to defeat him or be the last one standing in this dungeon deck crawler, if you will. You're choosing one of these heroes. You're upgrading via weapons your character to be able to attack the monsters, to get loot cards. Those loot cards are going to give you rewards. You're going to have the ability to either attack or change other people's cards, as well as just change the rules of the game by putting out these enchantments. This is probably the coolest thing I've seen in this game, actually. You can just lay 3 of these cards out that at any time are present, and it will change the rules and the dynamics of the game itself. Early bird pledge if you're backing before this weekend. And the basic training video is kind of worthless, to be frank with you, having watched it. That's the only content, and it runs down a little bit of what you're getting. $20 for the base, $30 for the expansion, $400 if you want to be in it. A few stretch goals here that are again, an extra expansion for cards. And that's it. That's pretty much everything. It runs you through a little bit of what you're doing at the top here. But even if you go over here and click the download the rulebook, the rulebook is 7 pages long, and it doesn't actually give you necessarily how to play some of this flow. It says, okay, you've got your character, you're doing the draw phase, you're checking these things. Kevin's out there, you have your loot cards, you have your other types of cards that you're utilizing, but that's it. It doesn't actually go through the flow of the game. It just lists out what everything is. So your turn consists of doing these things, but it doesn't tell you how to do some of these things. So I don't have a good sense of the flow. I can't give you a better description other than the fact that you're going to be equipping your character and somehow fighting these guys and going back and forth and doing damage. That's it. That's all I can really tell you. So, I have a hard time saying take a heavy look at this, even though the price point's cheap. Still, no idea how it actually flows and plays. So take that for what you will and give it a look-see. And maybe there'll be more out that comes in the near future. I mean, it's still got almost 4 weeks to go, but there's Dungeon Brah. Now, Queen is putting out another version of Kingdom Builder. I feel like we just did like a Kingdom Builder within the last year, though. This is the Anniversary Edition. It's already at $26,000. There's a new Queenie, the Emperor's Choice, which I feel like also was out previously. Basically, they're just blinging out Kingdom Builder. Their previous one, I forget which one was completely blinged out, but this is just a completely blinged out version of it. Resin and plastic and new art. So do you need a copy of $85 or even $100 if you miss out on the early bird here for a game that I can pick up for $12 without shipping or plus shipping $20 right now at retail? I mean, it's a great game. It's very divisive. It's a very simplistic but deeper than it appears game when you're laying these hexes down, building and producing resources. And some people really, really like it, and some people absolutely hate it. And it's very interesting. This is one of my first games in the hobby, and I never really got into it that deep before I ended up just getting rid of it randomly. And this one I'd like to actually have played again in the future just to kind of see. Emperor's New Choice. There's a few terrain elements, the fairy and the volcano that you're going to be dealing with. And you can get some of the upgraded stuff if you just want the upgraded stuff. I don't know. I mean, people are going to do it. People love it. And if you love this game, great. I think it actually was a Spiel winner in like 2012. So it's a very solid game. It's a great game if you enjoy this style of game, because a lot of people do and a lot of people don't, like I mentioned. But I'll just leave it at that. Judgment aside, if you want to bling it out, there you go. Queen is giving you the option to do so. Now we're going to talk about Moku Tower, the Endless Column. Moku was an original game a year or two ago from crowdfunding where you were basically stacking very pretty towers of handmade wooden components. And this one is bringing more of a game element to it in a slightly different way. But with the price of wood and with this more handcrafting, it's more expensive. And you can see, I mean, $20,000, only 246 people, right? But what are you doing in Moku Tower? Well, in Moku Tower, you're going to be playing, well, right there, right? You're going to be flicking dice off of a table at other people's towers, trying to knock them down as they're trying to build towers that will complete objectives. Because every round, you're essentially going to have 3 people playing. And this is how it plays up to 2 to 6, which is a little bit of an interesting situation, and you'll understand, right? You have one person as the light player, and then the person on one side of them is like the dark player, and then the person on the other side is the invader, and the invader is the one flicking dice. As the invader, you're going to be rolling these dice trying to match the icons, and as you match them, you have to match them twice before the other two, either of them, can complete their objective. But if you get a match, you get a special power based on which you match, and one of them is flicking the dice. One of them is adding a challenge card down there. One of them is just ending the challenge altogether and no one getting points. And so there are different ways that you can have a little bit of take that at the same time, which is going to be very divisive to people. I can see people loving this or hating the thought behind that sort of thing, right? So what you're doing, though, on these challenge cards is these challenge cards will come down and they'll have certain features. They'll say, okay, you need these 3 colors or these 2 colors of blocks in your tower. You have to have 3 different blocks, though, at least. And 2 of them have to be the big size. 1 of them has to be the small size. And, oh, you have to incorporate at least this one shape. And so you have to do that. And there will be 2 of those that go down, essentially, potentially each round. And then you can get them added. And there are different challenges versus just stacking abilities. And that's sort of what you're doing in the game as a nutshell. You're just having all of these different types of shapes and materials in terms of what you're going to be having to stack. And it's just first one to collect, I think, like 20 points based on the cards, because if you're the first one that completes the objective, you gather all the cards, you get those points, and then you just keep rotating around the group in sets of, 3. so that everybody gets a turn at every position. So ideally, I mean, the player count would be 3. It says place 2 to 6, but really they even say in the rule book optimally 3 or more. 3, all 3 people are constantly engaged. 4, you're going to have obviously one person that's not. 5 and 6, you know, a little bit, you know, downtime there. So that's everything, though. That's everything. That's all you need to know. That's the whole gist of the gameplay. The price point is really going to be more of the make it or break it for you, because it's going to be $64 for one of them, and it's going to be $120 for 2 of them, $125. And you can even get the tower combo from the previous original as well with this for another $125. So there you go. I mentioned all of this stuff. I gave you all this stuff already. It talks about all the things, the woods, the combined game that you can incorporate, and the rule book, the price levels, the pledges, a few add-ons down here, a few unlocks down here. So yeah, Moku Tower, solid dexterity game. Definitely something different. Definitely a different take on sort of the Rhino hero vibe, only with more take that and, you know, just more excitement. Because Rhino hero, I like that, but even I couldn't play it with my kids for too long. Anyway, so Cookie Run, Kingdom the board game. I have no clue what's going on with this. This is a light style worker placement game that, again, I will recommend that you check out the rule book for. They're giving you a whole bunch of cookie sugar themed components, as well as the gameplay that's going to match that. You're going to be basically going around to these different areas, trying to recruit, trying to gather resources, and trying to just score the most victory points you can by building various buildings. Landmarks is the term here, that are going to be slowly cycling out each round. You're going to be filling up the board, and you're playing it, I think, over like 4 rounds as well, it says, until someone wins at the end. We have a few how to play videos down here, a Dice Tower preview, and the rewards, which is what, like, it's actually a lot cheaper than I expected, $39. So yeah, again, this is one where I'd say check out the rule book. It seems to be a little bit, like I mentioned, the closest thing I can compare it to aesthetically as well as like heaviness is probably Flamecraft. It's probably, you know, around that weight. So if you're looking for something of that size, shape, and mechanism, so Cookie Run, there you go, check it out. Next up, Fortify, 2-player classic water balloon battling game, which is actually more of a tile laying game with some dice activation. And what I mean by that is you have your central character on the dice board here. What I mean by that is you have your central character here that you're going to be slowly laying fort tiles around in order to box in your own character, support characters, and various other objectives in order to get more ammunition or more ability to have cards in your hand to be able to play more fort pieces, because you're essentially trying to knock out these targets that you can see on these pictures here a total of 3 times. And if you can do that, well, you have to throw your dice, which are represented by your water balloons, on areas of tiles that match the color. And as you do that, you knock out these areas, and so you have to make your way back to those targets as you can, and you're going to be filling those in and enclosing them in order to get the other bonuses, as you can see here. The dice that you have, you can block dice, you can throw a wild one, which can do anything, and the yellow, again, has to hit on a yellow target. So you have to be careful or lucky, depending on how you want to hit things. And it also has an end of game where, you know, thematically incorporated, mom's calling the whole block home, and the end of the round where you just roll until somebody wins and you play through. So it's a little bit of a different tile laying 2-player game. And this is 2-player, so take it for what you will. There are the jerk card and the cousin card. Yeah, so each time you're going to be laying these tiles out in sort of a real-time manner. And depending on if you are the first one to do it, or if you want to even just not lay all your tiles out, but get that certain jerk or cousin card, it's going to give you an additional bonus, potentially even an extra water balloon or an extra effect, depending on which one it is and which phase of the round it is as well. So it's definitely got a different vibe than anything else out there. The combination of tile laying and real-time placement. The only thing I can even think of that I know like that is Sorcerer City, which is, to be frank, completely different, but I love real-time as well. So if you have any interest in real-time, this one might be a look-see, just because, again, you can see what the elements look like. You can see a little bit of the flow on the how to play videos, and a little bit of everything that goes along with it, because this is truly, truly, truly an indie game from Barrel Age Games. So there you go. That's Fortify, water balloon battling tabletop game, right? Okay, so now we're going to get into Klaw. Where were Klaw Now we're getting into Klaw, War card and dice game, and you're getting graphic novels. I think this is actually more known for the graphic novels. It's got $17,000 though, but you really need to scroll down significantly down here to the bottom to even start seeing some of the actual cards. The rule book is right here, and it gives a little bit of a preview. And essentially what you're having on these cards is you have a host and you have an animal, because basically these animal spirits inhabit these bodies. And you're going to be upgrading them and playing items and cards to them that are going to give them additional power. What you're doing, though, is you can see the red in the upper left-hand corner of these cards is the attack dice. The blue is the defense dice. So if you have 2 here and 2 here, you get 4 attack dice. 1 and 2 here gets you 3 defense dice. And the interesting thing about this battle combination is they count the number of marks that are here, and your items are not going to necessarily always just give you more dice, because you can only have 6 dice at a time total. But the items and the upgrades that you have may actually give you extra bonus numbers on the dice. So like the hand grenade that they use as the example in the rulebook will give you 2 times plus 3. And what that means is that 2 of your dice, any 2 of your dice you pick, and each of those dice is going to get plus 3 added to it. This 2 here would be a 5. And so then it's attack versus defense in terms of numbers. If you roll a 6, also something special happens then. But the thing is, it's not the sum total of that, right? It's you match up die to die, die to die, die to die. And you count the individual hits there, and each hit does a damage to the life point, which is the yellow at the top of the cards. And if you have more dice than the opponent and you're the attacker, that's an automatic hit. And so that's the difference of the dice combat that you need to know. And essentially, you're just taking 1 action per turn of either laying a card down, fortifying or improving, or attacking, and going back and forth, either knocking out a number of hosts or a number of cards until the opponent is just out. There's a campaign where you can only have 1 out at a time, and you can only go back and forth, and it sort of takes it so that you're not just laying it down. There's a special rule that you cannot attack essentially when you lay out a new character after your previous one's been knocked out for a full round. So in order that it just can't be a pile-on effect, right? Oh, I laid down a new guy as my 1 action. Oh, they attack him and knock him out. Oh, I lay down another guy. No, they're saying you can't do that, so they're already thinking ahead. But that's essentially what you're getting here. 51 items, 24 totems, the host cards that are the, humans that are there. The action cards that are actions instead of just, attacking, you can manipulate a little bit as well. So that's the game in a nutshell. It's going to cost you $45 for the core, $74 with the expansion. That's a pricey expansion. Well, I guess not really, $29. So 300 cards, and you've got, about 200 there. So it's going to add, yeah, okay, it's about right. Deluxe bundle if you want the game mat, the tower. So there you go. That is Klaw, War. So yeah, what else we got going on here? We got hot potatoes. Hot potato, hot potato, hot potato. This is in the line of like exploding kittens, but it's hot potato and it's a party game. And this is another one where the rulebook really doesn't really help you a whole lot, and it just kind of runs you through the explanation here. Actually, I don't even remember if there's a rulebook or a video on this one. The lack of some of this stuff this week is a little bit more prevalent or noticeable than some of the other weeks. You have action cards and you have potato cards, and at some point somebody plays a party card, and then you lay a bunch of your cards down from your hand when you think you have more, and then if you have the most cards laid down with the numerical sequence, you get it, and you collect your tokens. So that's it. You have to get a certain number of tokens to win. That's all you need to know. Expansion pack, it's going to cost you 26 or 45. Hot potatoes. Yeah, I'm covering it because it's 200% of its funding goal. It's got 15 grand. That's not insignificant. It's 15 more grand than I've ever raised on crowdfunding. So take that for what you will. Check it out. Fences, the ranch. I had no clue what to expect of this one, but this is actually a second launching of this, and it is over its funding goal of $7,000 right now. And as it's described down below, it's both easier and harder than Carcassonne from people who have played it. Essentially what you're doing is it's Carcassonne area control, where you're laying down these tiles, fencing in farms, and depending on what is in the farm, you're scoring based on what you have, right? Certain number of pigs, cows, chickens, whatever it may be. And the ranch expansion is essentially adding 9 modular pieces to it that are going to change up what is scored, the tiles that are going to be involved, and how you're scoring it, essentially, right? Like male animals here, chickens, gates, markets. So just giving you a little bit more from it from that standpoint, a little bit more components from a Carcassonne, and then that's why the quotes down here, will say it's both easier and harder than Carcassonne. But that's essentially what it is. They're not going to have stretch goals, and it's going to be just, indie game, print and play, as well as the original ranch and combo for $44 with the expansion. So yeah, 5 to 6 player expansion as well if you really want that. But that's the ranch. Check it out. Hopping over now to Gamefound, Kingdom Come Deliverance, the board game. Almost at $250,000 in a very short time from BoardCubator. What do you need to know about this app-driven open world game based on the video game property? And this is very interesting because they really go hard on the app on this page, folks. The other thing I have to mention, and I have a whole video that's going to be coming out hopefully this next coming week about this stable pledge program. We saw it announced a couple weeks ago, my thoughts, my feelings on it, and this is part of said stable pledge program. 1 to 4 players. Playtime, though, is very interesting. 4 hours. I didn't see that the first time I glanced through this. Revolutionary. And a lot of the quotes down below echo these same talking points. App-driven board game, where it's keeping track of a lot of stuff. And you can see that it's relativistically minimalistic on the table itself. And frankly speaking, the problem is it's kind of relativistically minimalistic as well on the actual page itself. I like it because they're sort of giving me a little bit of a Skyrim vibe. They say like, hey, if you use a skill, that skill gets better. Particularly the one they focus on the page is fighting. They're like, if you want to get better with the sword, you got to use the sword more. And you're going to unlock stuff and you're going to get stronger and that sort of thing. Now, they're unlocking stretch goals, which they say every other day are going to be gameplay content, so you need to know. Now, some of that is scenario-based. That's, again, going to be non-physical in the app. Why are you backing now? Extra gameplay content, reduction in price, and whatever they're going to get in terms of the scenario stuff. Reviews, well, most of it's previews, to be frank. There's a couple review-ish down here. From like the Beastie Geeks here, but that's mostly previews, so take that for what you will. And the problem I have with all of these previews is not that they're previews, but the thing, I have scoured this page, and again, maybe I'm completely missing it. Maybe I missed it in an FAQ. Let's check the FAQ just while I'm doing this. Nope, nothing there. There's no rulebook. So it gives me a little bit of a Destiny's vibe with the way you're sort of tile laying and using the app. But that's it. That's all we know if you don't watch any of the previews. And now, you know, Ant Lab has a playthrough so you can see a little bit. But this is a game where I want to know how much overhead I'm actually committing to. I have nothing wrong with the app-based integration. But the whole reason I play tabletop games is because I don't play video games, or I don't want to play a video game, right? And so this seems more like a video game with tabletop components rather than a tabletop game with video game components, if you will. And again, that's just superficial looking at this and going through what they are and what they have here. So, I mean, there's definitely a huge component of the physical, but a lot of it is kept track on the app. And how do you feel about that? Do you need that? We're seeing tons more of that. That is, you know, literally, I've been talking about 2 games a week almost essentially in the last month from that side of things. So does that matter to you? That's really what you need to know. That's everything that's on the page in a nutshell. You can check out the videos because the videos are the only other thing that you're going to get information off of besides really what I said. They talk about some of the back history. They talk about some of the video games, some of the inspirations, some of the mechanics in some of their own individual videos that sort of break down very brief snippets of it. But you really got to kind of watch the playthrough because the conversation here just doesn't really give you anything. You can check out the one round. That's probably going to be the most informative right here more than anything else. But how do you feel about that? App integration, heavily app integrated. So that's next on Gamefound. Now, the other thing on Gamefound launching this week came out of nowhere. Japanime Games launching a sequel expansion-ish called Core Connection. Core Connection was a game they said based on the page in 2020 that they brought to PAX, I think, East in 2020, right before the pandemic. And this is a 2 to 4 player deck building game where you basically, it's kind of like Gundam, if you will. You have a pilot, you have a mecha, as they're calling it. There's certain pilots that respond better to certain mechs, and you can resonate, which is like a special ability that you get with them. And you're going to be drafting and buying these cards through various turns and rounds in order to defeat a certain number of enemies to get points to win the game. And it's the first one to 20. But if you get to 20, everyone else gets, one last turn, essentially. And so you're going to be buying one card in a turn. You're going to be using cards to actually repair your mech, because you're going to be basically just what's the game? Mythics Enchanters, if you will. You're just going to be stacking these cards on top of each other right here with robots, pilots, and basically items or accessories to increase the stats. And you're going to have 3 stats. You're going to have a melee, a ranged, and a durability. Melee and ranged, right? Your attack. Durability, your defense. That's the gist of it, right? You flip over the top monster card if you choose on your turn to take the action of attacking instead, and you hopefully do more damage and kill the monster. And each of the monsters are going to have variable energies. As you upgrade your prototype, essentially is what you start out with for the robot, you start unlocking the higher levels, because there's 3 tiers of monsters that you're going to be doing. And as you get your, I forget which order it is, pilot or robot, when you get one of them, then the level 2 monsters get shuffled in. And then if you get the other one, then, or everyone has all of them, then the level 3 monsters get shuffled in. So they're harder to beat and they're just harder to deal with. So again, you can see the various things, the attachments, the tactics that you can play on your turn, because you can only do 1 action per turn, 1 buy per turn, and then unlimited tactics. So it's just how you want to upgrade, how you want to delve into these scenarios that they're featuring with this deck builder, if you will. That's it. Price-wise, where are we at price-wise? $40 for the simple skirmish, $75 for the new expansion and the setup and the playmat. So a few of the add-ons here. The previous one, I believe, is Rise of Atlantis right here with Titans Unleashed. I think Titans Unleashed is the 2. I know Rise of Atlantis is, but these 2, the Nabla Conspiracy and Jade Judgment, I believe, are the new ones here. So there you go. That is Japanime Games over on Gamefound again. They're nearly funded. There you go. Check it out. There you go. There's the roundup. Short and sweet this week. A little bit less exciting overall. Next week, I'll tell you right now, is going to be a little bit spicy. So tune in for tomorrow's video. We're going to have a lot of stuff launching at the end of September here. That's going to be a little bit heavier on the wallet. But I'm back in Daybreak. I'm in. Spoilers right there. No qualms about telling you. No qualms about, saying it. It's right up what I like from a board game standpoint. So, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for appreciating. Hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you around. Let me know what else you want to see in the future. I'm working on my reviews, 2 that came out this week. We talked about the Scooby-Doo collection. We talked about Etherfields. That's all I got. I got a kid at the door. Peace out. See you later.